it'd be good to get you on there. But that's kind of my idea, to get you on my podcast. But then I think you took it as in like, let's do one actually set out together.
I couldn't control how white people viewed me, and I couldn't control how brown people viewed me. I had to find a different way of seeking control over something, you know. And that's where my fitness thing came from. I felt like I had purpose again. I felt as though my life actually meant something again at this point.
I went to university, did engineering, then I did sales, selling like advertising in newspapers. Then I sold fish, believe it or not.
What's up, guys? I'm Olivier. This is The Middle Ground. I'm one of your hosts for this wonderful new podcast.
What's up, guys? And my name's Rhys. I'm the other host. And yeah, we're putting together this podcast to talk about all things fitness and mindset. And I thought a good place to start would be, you know, introducing ourselves, talking about our journeys and how we met, and actually how we've come to decide doing a podcast in the first place, to be honest. I actually can't believe we're doing one. Do you know what I mean?
No, definitely not.
It's a bit of a weird one. But like, I think we sort of met right at the gym. That's kind of where we met, right?
Yeah. I think you thought I was a tattoo artist.
Yeah, he's wearing a big jumper, but he's got a shitload of tattoos on him. And but no, yeah, we met in the gym, and I suppose we started just hanging out a bit at kind of Soho House. We're, you know, but basically, I'm an online coach. You're an online life coach, so we had a few things in common in terms of running a business, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think we probably started off, chatting about business specifically, because I think I was saying to you, you know, because I think I had some challenges that I was facing, and then I said, you know, how are you kind of find stuff? And I think maybe there was some crossover. I think you were finding some similar challenges maybe around that idea of like kind of wanting to not get bogged down in working like harder rather than smarter. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly that. Yeah.
And I thought, you know, I think it was actually you that said do the podcast, because I think after because I think you then, I don't even know how the race thing came up, actually. I genuinely can't remember how that came up.
No, basically, I think I was kind of doing a podcast anyway, purely talking about fitness, and I thought, you know what, it'd be good to get you on there. But that's kind of my idea, to get you on my podcast. But then I think you took it as in like, let's do one actually set out together.
Wait, so we're not even supposed to be here with this?
So that was a bit awkward when you're like, yeah, let's do that. But so I think that's kind of where it all kind of kicks off, because I think we've both been through a journey where fitness, mindset, and, you know, how you are mentally has, you know, had a positive impact on our lives. And I think that's kind of what we want to do, is to share our journey, but also give advice, but try and help people at the same time. But I think when I was suggesting or, you know, putting together the podcast, I was kind of going through a bit of a moment in my life where I was talking to a very good friend of mine about my upbringing as a mixed race kid. And you just seem to relate it with it completely, obviously. And I think that's kind of when it all kind of clicked. And we were just talking about our childhood, how we felt, what it was like growing up, being mixed race, you know, not having an identity and all that kind of stuff. And it all kind of just snowballed from there, right? Yeah,
for sure. And actually, I think hearing your journey made more sense of my journey, I think, because I think when you are, I mean, I don't know how much, we didn't cover this when we spoke about it, but when I grew up, the issues that I had as a mixed race kid, I didn't know anyone else who was having those problems or having those challenges. And actually, it wasn't really until we spoke. Obviously, I'm aware that other people would have had a similar journey or whatever, but I just didn't know those people. And then I think when you said that it was what helped you to find identity, I think I was like, hey, like actually, I'm not the only person going through this. It made it kind of made it more real that it was like I felt seen. I think was what it was.
Yeah.
When you talked about your experiences.
Yeah, and it was a bit of a weird one because as a coach, I obviously been through my own journey, and there was a time where I was always kind of like the big guy, wasn't confident in the way I looked. And I always thought that was the reasoning behind me, losing weight and becoming a coach and all that kind of stuff. But when I was actually talking to a friend, he just kept, digging. He was just like, but why did you do this? Why did you go on your fitness journey? Why did you feel like you had to change, physically, mentally? And he just kept going and kept going. And I just kind of realized that actually my whole life I've been trying to fit in, but I didn't feel like I had a place. And it was quite a beautiful moment, really. I got a bit emotional about it. And I've only spoken to a few people about it, but once you kind of identify that, and it then kind of explains your actions or how you are today as well. Because not only was I kind of like a mixed race kid, I wasn't in with the white kids or the black kids or even the mixed race kids, which is, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But like, to go in more detail, to be a mixed race kid in my school, your parents had to be black and white. But my dad is white and my mum is from Mauritius, so she looks more kind of South Asian kind of vibes. So I wasn't even really properly mixed race. So it was a very confusing childhood. But I suppose that's why I got into fitness, and I, become a coach, and why fitness has been a big part of my life, because it's finally given me like an identity. And it's kind of reversed the tables a little bit, where people are now coming to me and saying, mate, I want to be like you, I want to look like you, what can I do, or show me how you do things, which is the majority of my life hasn't been the case. And I don't know if you could relate to that in any way.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's interesting, the point that you say, like, I thought particularly poignant was when you say, like, not even with the mixed race kids, which I thought was interesting. Like, you had to have a black and a white parent, whatever. But life isn't black and white, right? It's like it's different gradients of the two. And I think that's where the challenge comes in. And I think I personally, because yours, I mean, that sounds like a weird thing, but because my skin isn't as dark as yours, and it isn't as dark as my dad's, it was really, really confusing, because it was like, it would be like, white people would be like, he's not quite white. There's something that's not. And I would get racial, sort of abuse in terms of being brown, but then with the brown kids I wouldn't be seen as brown. So like, and that was really, really frustrating, because it was like, it would almost be like, if I was going to be getting stuff from people who were white about it, at least I could seek solace in other people who had browner skin, but I didn't even feel brown enough for that. And I think that obviously pressed into the identity thing. I think for me, because I couldn't control that, I couldn't control how white people viewed me, and I couldn't control how brown people viewed me. I had to find a different way of seeking control over something, and that's where my fitness thing came from, because it was like, okay, well, nobody gets to decide this. This is like, I get to control how this story plays. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you said a similar thing as well. I seem to remember you maybe having a similar journey in that sense.
Yeah, I suppose it's been a long journey, and even now I've just turned 33 and I only just had the kind of realization. But I think one thing I'm starting to realize as well is that even though, my childhood was a certain way, there's nothing you could do to change about that. You could either look back at that and think of all the things it's done to you in a negative way. So feeling like you were out of place, not having an identity, it maybe didn't give me much confidence when I was talking to girls or anything like that. In terms of business maybe, and who I am as a person, I never feel like I'm doing enough. I'm pretty much a glass half empty kind of guy. But at the same time, maybe without that upbringing, I wouldn't be so hardworking or feel like I've had to prove a point. And maybe without all those traits that I just said, that maybe I wouldn't be able to be running a successful, coaching business or be self-employed and, and do well in that. So I think there's a way of kind of just looking at those negatives, but also flipping it and actually maybe just appreciating that's made you the person who you are and see the positives out of it as well. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everyone for anyone who is listening, who is mixed race, I'm sure you have your own journey, your own story. But I think I absolutely agree with, it's essentially like, it's not learning from a failure because it's not a failure to learn from, but it's using a negative experience and turning it into a positive. I think for me, like the turning point was actually quite recently, and it was when I went to Sri Lanka, and that was like quite a big trip for me, So I think for me, that was when I felt a bit more connected to that side of my family, And I think, I don't know why it took a trip to Sri Lanka to do that. Maybe I kind of put too much pressure on myself to have that as be a trip, but it suddenly made me feel like I could embrace that part of who I was a bit more, because I didn't have any idea what Sri Lankan culture was like. I didn't know what, obviously I know what Sri Lankan people look like, but there was so much that was like shrouded in mist for me, and it's helped me to be like, I've come back from that trip being a bit like, okay, cool, like I feel a bit more connected to that now. I feel like I can talk about it a bit more, which I guess is why, we can talk about it on the podcast, or certainly why I feel like I can talk about it on the podcast. And yeah, so it's helped me through that. And I think that will actually impact the business in a positive way as well, for sure.
Yeah, and I think even me and you just talking about that while I was coming up with this podcast idea, again, just finding someone that you could relate to and know that, you've been through the same experience as me is a very powerful thing when maybe I felt pretty lonely my whole life in regards to that. But people, I think I've also realised that we're talking about this from our experience, but, people could feel this way for many reasons. It doesn't have to be about race, but having no identity or not feeling like they're fitting in. It could be body image, or it could be like new kid syndrome, where you kind of like joining a new school or workplace. You might have friends who have different hobbies or interests to you, or a different upbringing where maybe you don't really particularly agree to the values or traditions of your family, and you're trying to break away from that. It could be shown in many different aspects. It doesn't have to be kind of race, but I suppose it is something that you're just kind of trying to figure out, as a kid or growing up. But like I said, it's taken a chat with my friend recently. It's taken you going to Sri Lanka recently. These are all recent things for us to kind of talk about these things openly and discover it more than anything, which has been quite a beautiful thing, right?
Oh, for sure. And I think I like the point around, like, because it's true. You don't have to be just mixed race to have a loss of identity. And I think in a weird way, starting my business was a kind of a way of sculpting that identity as well. So I think, thinking about kind of going through life, if I think back to kind of when I was a musician and doing that sort of thing, that was a way of me sculpting an identity when I was doing music, because it was a way of expressing myself through that medium that was different from everyone else, and it was then it kind of normalized that idea of not having to fit in, if that makes sense. And then I think beyond that was doing, like, getting in shape after like not being in shape for so long. That was a way of sculpting an identity. And then I think more recently with the business as well, is like I think because it's mine. Do you know what I mean? Like, you spent so long doing things for other people and trying to fit neatly into a box for other people, and then finally you get to do your own thing the way that you want it. Not in a like a narcissistic way, but like in a kind of a positive way. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what your experience was with your business, if that impacts it at all, but
I think for me, like how I've become an online coach, it's been quite a bit of a journey, and I don't think it started off as an identity thing. I think it was more about me trying to change my life. I just wasn't really enjoying the stage I was at. So kind of like if you met me 5 years ago, I would have been a completely different person. You probably wouldn't even recognize me. But I was kind of like in a 9-to-5 job, doing sales. I was drinking a lot, partying a lot, low energy, didn't feel great. And kind of I was approaching my 30s and I was like, is this life forever? Is this it? And then I kind of went into fitness to do something. I was like, something has to change. I can't keep going down this route. So I started training, really enjoyed that to the point where I then was like, I hate my job and life so much right now, but I enjoy training so much. Why can't I just take that leap and, become a coach? So, kind of qualified as a personal trainer throughout lockdown, which wasn't ideal. But as soon as like the parks started opening, as soon as people were allowed to go out, I just trained a mate for free in the park. He brought a mate the next day. He brought a mate, and it turned into a boot camp. When the gyms opened, I then became a personal trainer. And I just took that leap. I was just like, you know what? I hate my job so much. I was so miserable being that person. I almost knew that I had to find a new identity to almost become a different person to where I was before. But even then, my transition from becoming a coach to where I am now, I've been through many kind of like parts of my life and journeys to get to where I am today. But I think in terms of it and relating to my identity, I kind of knew that I just had to start fresh and become a different person almost, because the person I was before was something I wasn't proud of, and I didn't want to continue being, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
That's interesting that you use the word proud there, like in terms of, like, I'm just curious what the word pride or what the word proud means to you in that context. Like, because it's obviously, that was a turning point for you, and you said, I didn't feel proud of where was it kind of because you saw the end? Is it what does that word mean to you, proud?
That's a good question. I think I knew I wasn't living to what I was capable of, if that makes sense. And again, I think most of my life I've just been floating around, jumping from one job to the other. I didn't really have any direction. I didn't really have a plan. And I suppose I knew I was capable of more, but I didn't find my passion at the time, or I didn't find something that made me excited, or, that was going to take me in the direction I wanted to go. And again, I wasn't proud because I was lazy, low energy. I don't, and when you're all that kind of stuff and you're always hungover and you're always feeling tired, you're not then a particularly good partner. So yeah, there's a few moments where I was just like, yeah, fuck this. This needs to change. And that's kind of when I jumped on the fitness bandwagon and got involved in that. But then I quickly discovered that fitness alone wasn't enough, because even though I was doing a lot of fitness, I became a coach, I still didn't drop the drinking and partying and the social life. And I think I was training too much as well. And I was completely burning myself out. And that's when I kind of went through another transition where I was like, okay, I need to find balance here. I'm burning the candles from both ends. So reduced the drinking slightly. I still enjoyed a pint there and there. And just trying to find the right balance of training a little bit less, socializing a little bit less, having more energy, focusing on my nutrition. And then I was able to have a body then I was proud of. And then I'm running a business I'm proud of, because this, again, is something that I've built myself. I'm working for myself, and the work I put in, I reap the rewards from it. I'm not working for anyone else. And we're doing this podcast, which I never thought I would ever do. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, it's been a journey of different transitions and learning from my mistakes. But again, if I compare myself to where I am now in comparison to 5 years ago, I am proud of how far I've come and how much I've changed. I'm a completely different person. So so yeah, that's how I kind of got to where I am today. Yeah.
Can I just make a comment on that? Because there's one part of that towards the end that I loved was like when you say like me compared to how I was 5 years ago. I like that at no point like you've talked about like other people. Do you know what I mean? You haven't gone. It's not like you said something like, oh, I don't know. Joe Wicks, or I was just picking a name out of there, but I'm sure you don't want to be Joe Wicks. Well, maybe you do, I don't know. But like, as in, like, you haven't gone and thought of someone else and gone like, I know, I was in this place or whatever. I didn't feel proud and I wanted to be here. But actually, at no point you did that. You were like, you were in your own lane the whole time, you know. And it was like, and you said, okay, so 5 years ago I was here, and that's great because it's such a powerful thing to be able to, you know, only be in competition with yourself. Like Michael Jordan said, you know, like, I'm only ever in competition with me a year ago, you know. And I think that's super powerful.
Yeah, I think it's also something I'm working on as well, is a bit of gratitude, looking back and appreciating how far you come, because that's something I'm not particularly good at. And if you don't do that often enough, you constantly feel like you're not doing enough. And again, that just relates to everything we spoke about. But yeah, I'm actually quite interested. Like, how did you transition from like fitness to a life coach, essentially?
So, I mean, it's a funny thing because like fitness for me has always been, a constant to some degree, and it's like, I think I think we probably both. This is probably another area where we both resonated with each other. Is I was also the fat kid when I grew up. So like, you know. At one point or another, I was like, you know what, I need to get in shape. I need to sort this out. And it was a bit of a journey because I got into shape and I was actually in really good shape at one point. And then when I got jumped in London, and then I ended up, this is what I was like, when I had to have like an operation on my finger and stuff, it set me back like a year, you know. And then it was like, okay, so confidence like straight down again, weight up, all this sort of thing. And then that was really difficult. So but all this time I was doing that, I think at this point I was working in a 9 to 5. So I was in an office. In fact, I was in an office one road away from here.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay. All right.
So I was working 9 to 5. I'd done the music career already, so that was like, that had happened. I was happy with how that had finished. I'm still friends with them today. And so now I was in 9 to 5, still trying to like keep in shape, but it was difficult because that year that passed where I couldn't train meant that when I could train again, I wasn't really doing it very well. So I got like a help from a PT guy called Adam Howman, which, by the way, I highly recommend, as well as obviously Rhys. But he changed my life, man. Like, genuinely, he changed my life. Like, he helped me to get into shape again. You know, I went from being in shape to not being in shape again, losing complete direction, not knowing how to do it, to getting in shape again. I was like, okay, there's power in this coaching thing. Like, there's real power to it. So, my kind of journey through it, I then was thinking, so whilst I was at this 9 to 5 job, I was there for a long time, and I think as the years mounted up, my confidence was just getting worse and worse and worse, and I thought, you know, I can't do this anymore, because I was really, really struggling there. I wasn't happy. I'd sort of plateaued big time. You know, there was no room for me anywhere higher. So I started training as a life coach then. So I spent more money than I could afford at the time on a 9-month course, which meant that essentially I had to like we finished work at 5:30, but I always try and sneak out at like 5:15 to catch my bus to get back to Hanover so that I could get back on time to start at 6, which was when the course started. So I did that, and it was a 4-hour training session every Tuesday. You know, you finish at 10 p.m. It's quite late when you're kind of trying to fit this into everything. So I developed this. I realized that actually, you know, I was loving this coaching thing. I thought, this is great. You know, I felt like I had purpose again. I felt as though my life actually meant something again at this point. Well, sorry. So like, it was really cool. And then as like, I decided, you know what, I can't do this work thing anymore. I was like, okay, so I want to coach people. That's what I want to do. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to train as a PT as well, and I'm going to do this like 360 thing. It's going to be like life fitness and, you know, physical fitness, and like have a 360 thing. This is what was genuinely was my business model. And then I decided that actually I was taking on too much. You know, I qualified as a fitness instructor, and I got that. I haven't done the personal training thing yet, but I've done like 90% of it. And then I quickly realised that actually that might come and it might not. But where my passion was helping people to, you know, kind of overcome career challenges and to get them, because, you know, it's where I was. I essentially wanted to help me, you know, the version of me that couldn't get out of the job, you know. So my transition was quite difficult actually, because, you know, I didn't really have a security blanket. Do you know what I mean? It was just, but I just knew that I couldn't do that thing anymore. I knew I had to help people, and I had to feel useful, and I had to feel purposeful. And then it changed everything as soon as I started doing that. And then, you know, fitness is still a huge part of my life. I still train, you know, 4 times a week. But for me, what really kind of got me going was helping people in their careers, you know.
Yeah mate, I love that. And it sounds like we've gone through a similar journey, and again it was just weird that we had so much in common when we were talking about, you know, our meetups at Soho House, and you know, talking about the podcast. And so if someone's listening to this podcast and they're feeling kind of stuck in, you know, what they're doing, or, you know, they're feeling a bit lost, like what's the kind of like number one advice that you could give to people, or what's the number one thing that you learned on your journey that you would say to people to do if they want to, you know, change their jobs or just change their mindset? What's the biggest thing you've learned?
The biggest thing that I've learned is to trust my gut. This doesn't always work, and it definitely leads to some mess ups, but I think ultimately it's been my true north. It's been my compass the whole time. And so I think my advice would be, actually, do you know what? I think, yeah, it's trust your gut, and I think it's more than that. It's about being willing to have, I don't know if you've heard the term a squiggly career.
No.
So a squiggly career is essentially what I've had. It's like the conventional career, I guess, is like, you know, you go to school, you study hard, you go to university, you do the thing that's going to get you the job that you want, then you do the job, and it's like, of course. It's like, you know, like upwards and upwards and upwards, you know, climb that ladder. Whereas a squiggly career, which is kind of more like what I've had, and probably you to a degree as well.
100%.
Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, you do the thing, then you do another thing, then you do another thing, and it's like, I learn a bit from that, learn from this, from that. And all the while I was doing that, everything that enabled me to alter my path was my gut. You know, so like if I think to music, so, you know, we were at a point where there was a decision around, if we want to stay on, do we change the name or do we not change the name? If we change the name, we would get signed by a major label. If we didn't change the name, we were done. It would kind of polarize the group. I trusted my gut. I was like, actually, you know what? I love what we've done. I love what we've achieved. I think now it's time probably to try the next thing. Like that was what my gut told me. And then I ended up in a job, and I got stuck in a job for like 10 years, and it was my gut that said, this isn't right anymore, you know? And this is where you create that squiggliness, right? Because it's like, there's nothing conventional about that, you know? So then I dropped off and then started my own business, which is like a huge learning curve. You know, that's a real steep drop. And it's not been easy. But I know that I'm working towards something that will make everything easier. And that will be how I get from here to here through all the squiggles rather than the conventional. So trust your gut, and not every career is, you know, follows a conventional path.
Yeah, I could totally relate to the squiggly career path, because what was it? I went to university, I did engineering, then I did sales, selling like advertising newspapers. Then I sold fish, believe it or not. True story. And then I worked like to like restaurants around London. Like not just me carrying a barrel of fish, but like for like a fish company. And it was the first job that was available when I came back from travelling. And then I worked in hospitality, which was a fun job, but it was a lot of partying, and that kind of what kicks up all the, a lot of drinking and partying and not feeling great. Then obviously a personal trainer now, and I'm then an online coach, so I could definitely get what you mean from that. But also, I suppose from each job you learn something, and you learn new skills. But I think in terms of like trusting your gut, and you said, sometimes it wasn't right, and it was probably a mistake, or you learned from it, or you didn't go quite to plan. That's also what life's all about, right? It's just trying things out, and if you fail, then it only makes you stronger, and you probably learn something from that failure or mistake. I think for me, I definitely agree with trust your gut, and almost just kind of like just go for it in a sense. But I think for me was not caring what people think, because if I did, I wouldn't end up where I am now. Like, when I was leaving my 9-to-5 job, obviously that's a comfortable job. I'm getting consistent pay every month. Obviously, comfort zone, even though I hated it, but it was a good income. Jumping from that to becoming a personal trainer, where maybe the pay is a lot less, a lot of people were telling me that was a bad idea. Even when I was getting into fitness, and, I was telling my mates how much I was paying for a gym membership or how much I was paying for coaches. They told me I was wasting my money. Switching from a floor personal trainer to an online coach, a lot of people disagreed with that. So if I kind of cared about what people thought about the decisions I was making, then I wouldn't have made any decisions. And it's like what you said, I just stayed in my own lane and just focused on what I wanted to do. But you got to block out the noise as well, because people always have an opinion about what you're doing, but it's your life. So that would definitely be one of mine. And I think it kind of relates to maybe trust your gut. Is just step out of your comfort zone and just try something and just give it a go. Because like I said, there's a few times where I was at a crossroads, and either I stay stuck where I am, not particularly happy, or, that's it forever, or I try and do something, give it a go and see how it pans out. And you'll make mistakes, but it's gone pretty well. And I think that's the difference to, again, where I am now in comparison to 5 years ago. And funny enough, I think the people who have an opinion of what I was doing or the changes I was making, when I compare myself to them, they haven't changed that much. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's mine. It's like stay in your lane, focus on yourself, and don't care what other people think, personally.
I think that's absolutely perfect. Well, listen, guys, I hope everyone who's listening, if anyone is listening to this podcast, I hope they are.
Please listen to us.
Hopefully you guys took away some value from that. And we'd love to keep you guys on board with more podcasts. So you've been listening to The Middle Ground.
Yeah, hit that subscribe button and, rate us, message us. And we appreciate you guys listening.
Thank you guys. Bye.